Good evening and welcome to K4CO Radio in Colorado. Breaking in for a special segment because we have a special guest this evening, psychologist, speaker, podcast host of The Be Ruthless Show, and best-selling author Samantha Ruth. Samantha, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. And I'm going to hand this one over to K4CO's secret weapon, Sarah Duke.
Uh-oh. Okay. That's quite the lead-in. Well, thank you, Kevin. I don't know about the secret weapon part, but I am definitely Vice President of Media Relations. That much is true. Well, thank you. Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to a really special Friday segment. We have, the amazing Samantha Ruth. What an accomplished woman who is taking the world by storm one day at a time. So thank you for coming in. I mean, it's so impressive what you have accomplished and continue to accomplish. So thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you for making time.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about Samantha Ruth. I know it's samantharuth.com. Tell us about your story and what led you to create this community.
My story is that I married the one who got away. We met when we were babies. I was 24 and he was 26, and we were together for a few years in Michigan, where we're both originally from. And we needed to grow up a little bit and have some time apart. And when we reconnected, he had moved to Colorado and said, please don't make me move back there. So I ended up here. And unfortunately, he passed away less than 4 years after that with an undetected heart condition he had had his entire life. So I fell in love with Colorado and chose to stay and do some work out here that I also think needed to be done, that I learned about while I was here.
Well, truly following your heart. That's a touching story. We love that. And people do love Colorado. I'm a native here, and I know it's super rare to have some natives. But the mountains and everything that we have. So thank you for staying and being such an integral part of our community. Tell us what it was like, because you had the business, I think, in Michigan, right? And then you moved to Colorado. What was that transition like?
I thought, quite honestly, coming to the land of Columbine, where I worked with the schools in Michigan. I had my own practice, but I did a lot of work with the youth task force and crisis work, liaisoning between the schools, the police, and doing a lot of work, having a mental health professional on site for things that otherwise might go awry. And so I just thought that was how the world worked everywhere. And so I came here ready to knock on the door everywhere. And that's what I did at schools. Just, hi, I'm Sam. This is what I did in Michigan. Can I do that here? And it wasn't you have to take this class, or we require this additional certification. It was just, no, we don't do that here. And so I started getting frustrated and fired up, and I'm pretty feisty, and I wasn't really okay with that.
Okay, so trying to break in schools was kind of your first prerogative, but it's definitely evolved into doing more of the individual sessions, group sessions. Tell us a little bit more about how that's evolved for you.
I really couldn't get my foot in the door at all professionally, and I've never had a problem with that. So that was new. So personally, my dreams are coming true. Professionally, I have to let it all go. So I created an online business before COVID because my clients in Michigan were struggling to replace me and find someone who worked the way I did, which is different. I didn't know that so much yet. So I was struggling to understand why it was different here. I hadn't figured out that it really depends on where you are in the world. And then I lost Jim. And so then I started to recognize that people responded to me as a widow the same way they responded to anyone with mental illness. I looked like I had horns. No one knows how to talk to you. And I started to see these two worlds as one and wanted to make them one and work with people in the same ways. And there was also pressure as a psychologist specializing with crisis and trauma. that I should just know what to do and get back to work.
That is so interesting. I'm glad that you have brought this up. I think a lot of times psychiatrists and psychologists get kind of pinned into what you're supposed to do, right? You're labeled as this is your role. You know what to do even in your personal life, when we don't until we're actually going through it. It becomes such a personal, individual grieving part, which I wanted to touch on. I know that you help people with anxiety, depression, trauma, and crisis, but I like that you focus on grief, because that's not only a very personal element that really it touches everybody. Everyone's life, we have some form of grief, and you founded Grief Hab, correct?
I said over 2 years after I had lost Jim to a friend, I need rehab for grief. And I was not kidding, because I was not able to find the support I needed with my background and resources. And so I started thinking about what do people without those tools do? I didn't receive a person in the waiting room talking to me. I didn't receive a pamphlet at the hospital. I didn't receive support at the funeral home. I went home and was able to call my own therapist because I knew how to do that. Other people don't know what to do, and researching it when you're already struggling is too much. So there are people who just don't get the help that they need. And so 2 years later, I still wasn't okay, and I still couldn't find the help I needed. So I just said, I'm creating it. That's kind of my personality. You'll learn. And it's not just the counseling part. It's every time I came up for air, something new came in the mail that I either had to close this account or present the death certificate here. And that would knock me right back down and derail any amount of healing I might have started. And so taking those tasks and that stress off of people's plates so that they can just heal and focus on the emotional pieces, it could be changing a light bulb, really, truly. That felt like the end of the world to me. And I laugh at it now, but it really did feel like the end of the world. And there's someone listening who, could feel like the dishwasher breaking is the end of the world, and you don't know what to do or where to go. And research, our brains change.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Through trauma, grief, absolutely. Our DNA and our brain for sure change. How do you find if there is any difference or similarities between trauma and grief?
Trauma is much more physical. Okay. There's a nervous system reaction. Your body responds. There's shock. Grief may have that, but it's different for everyone. All of these situations are different for everyone. Anyone who has grief they're anticipating and preparing for, it doesn't hurt any less. They just have the opportunity to do some things and put some things in place that will soften that unexpected Wednesday at noon phone call that I got.
For sure. What I really love about your practice and what you emphasize on your website and who you are is that it's so personal. I think a lot of times there's this blanket that gets put over someone. You had mentioned like abuse, whether it be substance abuse. I think it gets put into this bucket of one size fits all, and that is really not true. And I love that you have that individualized practice where you can say, here's what you're going through, and let's take it at your own pace, which I really liked about reading about you too. It's don't push someone when they're not ready to go into something that's really traumatic or they're really suffering, when to pull back. And there's, it's not a one size fits all. It's a very personal, individualized practice, which I thank you for doing that. Truly, from someone who's gone through grief, has gone through trauma. I feel like sometimes I've been overlooked and not really taken like this is you and this is your story. So I wanted to personally thank you. I really wanted to be here and actually meet you in person and be here for the interview. So thank you for everything that you do. With that, we'll take a quick break. For those of you, please stay tuned. We have so much more about wonderful Samantha Ruth, and we'll take a quick music break.
And welcome back to K4CO. Good evening. We are continuing our interview with psychologist Sam Ruth, and Sarah is doing a bang-up job.
Well, thank you, Kevin.
Thank
I'm
you.
always here to have, my ego needs help, I guess, apparently.
Don't all of ours.
Which fits in with, what we're talking about. So thank you all for tuning in on a special Friday edition with Samantha Ruth. We've been talking about really what grief and trauma looks like on an individual basis, how it's evolved and how it's such a personal, individualized practice. So during the break, and if you're listening, please tune in because I think this is actually incredibly important. There has been such a stigma throughout our world. And today, when you have a mental health issue, if you're experiencing grief, if you're experiencing trauma, either to not talk about it, there aren't resources, it gets shoved under the carpet. And it is so incredibly important because all of us feel that. We all go through it. Every human being on planet Earth has every feeling under the sun. So I think to know that there is help and that there are resources and people out there who can walk you through safely is so crucial. So I wanted you, Samantha, to talk a little bit about the different stigmas, how they're maybe starting to fade a tiny bit. I think the tune is changing, but we still don't hear much about, grief and mental health issues. Can you elaborate a little bit with that?
Stigmas are changing, thankfully, but people don't recognize that grief never ends. And grief brings with it all sorts of other things that are invisible. So I just call both mental illness and grief the invisible populations. And a lot of people dealing with grief, whether it is long-term or not, end up dealing with anxiety or depression for a short amount of time. And it is difficult to speak up and say, I'm not okay. And so if the rest of the world isn't paying attention or acknowledging these situations for them, people suffer more. And that's why I try to be the voice and say, look around. We have millions of people suffering silently that we need to do the work for. It shouldn't be the burden shouldn't be on them, us.
I totally agree. It's so interesting. I grew up in a situation where it wasn't always okay to ask for help. And I think that is kind of a societal thing where it's looked at as a weakness. And I have learned that, my goodness, it's such a huge strength to say, I can't do this alone. Someone else help me. I don't have to struggle alone, because it creates even more trauma, like you said. And then you have the anxiety, depression, other issues are popping up. So tell me, if you would, kind of what the path to healing actually looks like.
I first want to point out that everything that you just said I agree with, and it's the world that has it backwards. So anyone who right now thinks they have a weakness, whatever it is, that's your strength. And that's what Ruthless, which is so much of what I talk about, is about. It's taking all of the things, whether it's being short or having a mole or having anxiety or having some sort of disability. It is the world telling you that that's a weakness and that you can't ask for help. If we learn how to reframe that and figure out how that's our strength, then we really can't be stopped. So the path to healing is recognizing that you have to tune everyone else out and do it your way. So for me, that was not working. I had to take some serious time off, and the world did not like that.
I can agree with that wholeheartedly. I am a woman who sometimes needs to say, I have too much on my plate and it will be okay. You can take time for yourself. And again, it is maybe a societal thing, a world thing to say that that's not okay to take time for yourself. I actually put it in my calendar to say, take an hour and do nothing. Go take a bubble bath or go watch a movie or go for a walk, take the dog out, go do something to regain that balance, because we're always pounding ahead and we're neglecting, I think, a lot of the stuff that is creeping in that we're taught to avoid. So I want to thank you so much for being this light. You did mention Team Ruthless. I would love for you to tell the listeners more about Team Ruthless.
They will tell you that it is because I ruthlessly advocate for anyone in my world, and that is true, but that's not where it came from. It is a group that is struggling. You know, it's a support group. We meet on Wednesday evenings virtually, and we get through life together, not just at that time. We talk 100 times a day when someone's having something great happen, when somebody's having something difficult. And we are more than a group. We're a family. It is not the typical group. So I always tell people to give us a try, because what you see on TV or what you think in your head, I've done everything possible to make it not that.
Awesome. Okay. So you mentioned virtual. Are these all virtual? Do you have in-person groups? Do you have individuals as well that come in?
In Colorado, I do.
Okay. So you are kind of being virtual. You can go anywhere. So do you have people all over the world tuning in?
I do.
That is amazing. What's the farthest stretch that you have?
Australia, I can think of for sure. That's the best part, is that people are hurting everywhere and you never know who's watching or listening. There's people all over the world. And in the Grief Hab community, which is a Facebook community that anyone dealing with loss can join, there's people from multiple countries, all different time zones, so you are never alone. If you are awake at 3 a.m, someone else is there also saying, I get it.
That is awesome. Yeah, 24/7 support, no matter, and yeah, it creeps in when it creeps in. Yeah, it can be, like you said, 3 a.m. That's so cool that you do both the virtual and in person. Do you usually meet, you said once a week or once a month virtually?
At least once a week. Some
Okay.
do 2. Some people need their freedom, but some people
Nice.
are pretty committed and do Wednesday and Saturday. It's what works for you.
Okay. And you have a couple different packages that you actually offer with your services. What do those entail?
I kind of do whatever works for you. I'll do something customized. I have retreats. I speak at people's offices. You name it, I'll make it work.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I definitely want to get into the retreats when we come back. We're going to take another quick music break. For those of you listening, we have Samantha Ruth on. Stay tuned. We will be back in about 5. Thanks again.
Friday evening conversation with psychologist Sam Ruth and K4CO's own Sarah Duke.
Well, we are here. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. Thank you, Samantha Ruth. This has been wonderful. Thank you for chatting with us. I know you have a lot of awesome things that are happening in the state of Colorado and outside. You have retreats coming up, a lot of fun stuff. One thing that I want our listeners to know, we've been covering what to do if you're experiencing grief, anxiety, depression. Ask for help. We're trying to smash the stigma. We've gone over the programs and services you provide. So you're doing virtual, in-person, having people from other countries, which is so amazing. It's 24/7. But what I think is really important is you're not kind of like a normal counselor in the sense of how you charge. How do you set yourself apart?
Yeah, I will not turn anyone away.
Maybe next time.
And we are a nonprofit, so I will find funding for anyone who cannot afford it themselves.
That is amazing. You are the first therapist,
This
if I
time
can call you that.
actually
I don't want to blanket you, that's ever said that. I've actually never heard that. It's always out of pocket. You're doing insurance. Like, there's never been someone that will say, we're going to find you help no matter what. That is outstanding.
Well, also let me add this. I will find you help no matter what. If you don't want to work with me, please reach out. If you'd prefer to work with a male, please reach out. One of my frustrations is people being told they have to wait 5 weeks or not getting a return phone call. So you can contact me and I will help you get whatever it is that you're looking for.
That's why I was like,
That's amazing.
if I
It's
zoom
very
out,
rare
it's
in
just
today's
easier.
world to say, please contact me, even if we're not the right fit. I'm going to make sure that you find help where you need to.
earlier I said I didn't quite realize that I worked differently. So this is how I've always worked. My clients have said, you go above and beyond, and you're so different, and this is how it should be done. Mm-hmm. This is how the world, we're dealing with people who are struggling. So I didn't realize. Now I know. I do it differently. But my clients don't have to wait until their next appointment to call. Things come up outside of business hours.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's a fresh breath, it's wonderful. Thank you for doing things a little differently. Reinventing the wheel is sometimes needs to be done. I like it. For your clients, are you seeing adults? Are you seeing children? What age groups do you usually work with?
I started my career with at-risk teens. I can't let that go. It's still a big part of my heart, but I do work with a lot of adults who have had trauma. Since I've lived with anxiety and been through it myself, I connect and they feel comfortable working with somebody who can get it.
For sure. If I can, we're really trying to break down the stigma. I want to mention this to anyone that's listening to this right now. If you're affiliated with either a rehab, a nursing home, a hospital, a school, especially, if you know someone that can benefit from this, please contact either K4CO or Samantha Ruth. We're going to have all of her information on our website. It's samantharuth.com. If you know someone, especially we're trying to help everyone, adults and youth, but, schools need it just as much, as everyone else. So if you are listening, you are struggling with anything, please reach out. Grief, anxiety, trauma, depression, there's help out there. And what is amazing is Samantha will find a way to get you help, even if you're not the right match, she's amazing. So you're going to be the right match. So definitely reach out. Wanted to talk about your events and retreats coming up because you are a busy woman with lots of things going on, which is great. Tell us about the first one, Healing Together Through the Holidays. Tell us about that one.
That's pretty important and special to me because I started a couple years ago going out and trying to collaborate with people to do events during National Grief Awareness Week. No one knew it existed. So, again, I got fired up, decided I had to do something about it, created an annual event. So this will be the second year. It's a full week. Last year it was 8 days because there are so many different types of loss. I don't want to leave anything out. Addiction, suicide, loss of a parent, loss of a child, loss of a spouse, loss of a job, loss of a pet, you name it, it's covered. Infant loss, miscarriage, and then how to heal. Mm-hmm. So this year it will be in Michigan at Wayne State University. Quite excited about that. Last year I had a hard time here in Colorado. So I'm moving home, spending the winter in Detroit. And it's live and virtual, so it'll be open to students and faculty, and anyone anywhere can attend. And then it stays available in a library because people struggle through the holidays.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Those are some of the hardest times for people. Absolutely. So what does kind of the 8 to 10 days look like? Is it a lot of seminars? Is it speakers coming in? What is involved with it?
This year, yes, there's speakers all days, but there will also be people doing Reiki and different types of healing. There will be play type of activities. There will be therapists there in case you need to talk. One of the things I learned was that some people didn't come live because they didn't know what a grief event was, and they were afraid they would get emotional and melt down. So I called and asked, you got tickets, you didn't come, just checking. And they were so grateful I had it virtually. But I learned that I need to have all of the other things there. It's not just crying and 7 days of boring conference, but there will also be all of the things, journal writing workshops and all different types of things that we're talking about. Nice. That help you through it.
That's awesome. So are there other therapists there with you that are helping? Okay. Mm-hmm. Literature, things like that. Okay. Awesome. And when does this take place?
December 2nd through the 8th.
December 2nd through the 8th. Okay. And you have one actually coming up in Colorado this summer, correct?
So we'll have one here, August 30th and 31st. So that's National Grief Awareness Day and International Overdose Awareness Day.
Okay.
All these invisible. So we have Hot Dog Day, by the way, on the radio,
awesome. Nice.
on the it's on your calendar.
Okay.
There's commercials, but no one knows about these.
Wow.
So I'm trying to make a big deal, not because I want people to stand around and cry, because I want to get them legally added to calendars. And I've not had success, so I made my own.
I love it. Yes, thank you. Actually, you brought in a couple for us. Thank you. Yeah, it's to create awareness is kind of step one. Hey, we have this problem, and here's the solution, right? I mean, I think a lot of us kind of stay in the problem, even when, why is the solution sometimes so hard to nudge? So I appreciate it. It does. It's breaking down lots of doors and sometimes uncomfortable at times. So I appreciate everything that you're doing for many communities. And so let's see, the retreat, you said August 30th and 31st is here in Colorado. Don't know the location yet, correct?
That's more of an event. The retreat's fun.
Okay, sorry. The event, okay. We're gonna get people to both of those. And is this open to anyone in Colorado, or is this anybody who wants to come?
Anybody who wants to come.
Okay.
Yeah, my dear friend who came to the retreats and is now a part of Grief Hab Makes Journals will be there with her journals coming from Connecticut. There's a lot of support everywhere else for what's going on. People come to Colorado to help me make a lot of noise.
Okay. Well, we're going to help you make some noise. That is for sure. We have some people that definitely are affiliated with rehabs, with schools that are doing what you're doing. And so again, yeah, it's creating this awareness of there is this problem and here's this solution, and how can we band together as a community and help each other? Because to me, what else is life about unless you're helping someone, you're connecting with someone? We don't have to suffer alone or do anything alone for that matter. I mean, they have groups for everything out there. I mean, truly, you can go on Craigslist, Facebook, there's a group for everything. But if you're suffering, it's so much harder. And it's an epidemic, if I can say it like that. I mean, it truly is. So again, I just want to thank you. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back with Samantha Ruth. Thank you all for listening.
I'd like to ask a quick question. You mentioned earlier, it was a little concerning about Colorado, just running into resistance with schools, funeral homes, and rehabs. I mean, what do you think that comes down to? Would that be political funding, or what do you think that comes from?
It is run by the government here.
Right.
100%. So in Michigan and many other Midwestern states, if something happens, if somebody gets a drunk driving, the courts will ask other input. Here it's dictated by the courts, by Dora. I've made Dora a human.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's very concerning.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time trying to connect with legislation, bereavement laws, all sorts of things in the world, but there is a problem in Colorado. So if you agree and you're also doing the same thing, I'd love to connect.
We will get you connected. I agree. It is really concerning.
Excellent.
It becomes this big government thing when it has nothing to do with a political anything. It has to do with the own personal dilemma that we're in. So why we have to go through legislation to get help?
Yeah, well, state funds being shifted around for other things, like other groups, as places you mentioned.
Yes.
All right, let's take that break.
Well, happy Friday, everyone. Thank you again for listening. This has been such a wonderful hour. Thank you, Samantha, for being here. It's been very educational, informative, and it makes me be on even a bigger mission to really, truly pound down the walls that need to be pounded down. So, I mean, you're so accomplished. Being a speaker, we didn't even get into that, that you go to places and do speaking for people with their businesses. You're an author, the founder of Grief Hab, founder of Ruthless. I mean, you are truly taking the world by storm, which is very impressive. So again, I wanted to ask our listeners, for those of you that are tuning in, Samantha is trying to break the stigma down for those that are suffering from grief, trauma, depression, anxiety. If you're suffering, she is here. She is not like a quote unquote normal counselor. She will not only refer you out, but she will find a way if you can't pay for it, which is outstanding. It's so rare to have someone like that that's here for you. And it's super individual. It's tailored for exactly what you're going through, step-by-step process. So if you are affiliated with a school, with a hospital, with a rehab, anyone that can use this and use her services, please reach out. It's SamanthaRuth.com, and she has all of her services there listed. But thought I would end on a couple really exciting notes. So if you would share a couple success stories that you have had from some of your clients, that would be wonderful.
Just Tuesday night, I learned I'm doing a book project, and one of my authors shared that she became a psychologist because of working with me 20 years ago, 20 some years ago or so. So that's a little bit longer. She, of course, now has gone through a loss, and we reconnected. Somebody dealing with loss has chosen to leave her position within her company to be on the board and work for better bereavement laws and medical leave, and has created a nonprofit in honor of who she lost. There's so many I can think of. Someone else has found journaling to be so helpful, and I think I said as a part of my team makes my grief hab journals, and will be at all of my events with hers and mine. And so it doesn't get easier, it gets different, and you find people along the way who become a part of your new life that you didn't ask for, but I can't imagine this life without them now.
That's amazing. It's all about community. So you have not only one book that I'm going to have to toot your horn for, because this is pretty awesome. So Faces of Mental Illness came out, and you have yet another one coming out this December. Tell us about that book.
Faces of Grief. So grief looks a lot of different ways to a lot of different people. And we have a story of a father whose son is falsely imprisoned. A mother and daughter, the 15-year-old who's lost her father, a mother who lost her children to addiction. It's not just loss of life. And so this is the first in a series. Jack Canfield is my mentor, and I took some time working with him to heal. So they're like the chicken soup for the soul book. So this will be the first. So then we'll do Faces of Grief, maybe for addiction and for families, and they'll just keep going.
That's amazing. And I love that you can cover all of these different facets of life. So it's grief of, you mentioned even if you lost a limb, if you've had a miscarriage, if you lose any family member, it could be mental illness, physical illness, drug abuse.
Reading some too, eating disorders, self-esteem, communication skills.
National Eating Disorder Awareness Week is Monday. It's really important. Grief Hab is any and all loss. And if you just want to learn how to be there to support people going through loss. But it is also important to connect with people who've gone through your exact loss. So I needed other widows. I needed people to tell me I wasn't losing my mind and I was going to make it. And so it is important to have both.
I totally agree. I find my communities of people saying, you have gone through, you've walked in my shoes. How did you handle this situation? Because it's very different once you've experienced it. Like we mentioned earlier, your entire DNA brain changes when you go through something significant. And so if you've lost someone or gone through a miscarriage or, you've lost a parent, you find those people to say, be here, be a part of my community. How did you grieve? How do you process? And grief and trauma come up at the most random times. That to me has always fascinated me, where it's not just, okay, I'm in this therapy session for an hour and now everything's great. A week can go by, an hour can go by, and something will trigger something, and it's so out of the norm. And I love that you're there 24/7, and that you're not only breaking down doors, breaking down the stigma, but you're reaching out to people on a global aspect and bringing communities together. It doesn't matter where you're from, what your background is. We are all in it together. That to me is so empowering. So I, again, appreciate you sharing your story. So I think a bunch of people are going to reach out to you. So how can people find you and reach out?
SamanthaRuth.com is the easiest, the best way. And if anyone wants Faces of Mental Illness, I don't charge. It's out there. It's to help people. So just reach out for a copy. Wow. And that Faces of Grief will be the same way once it's out. SamanthaRuth.com. Grief Hab is a Facebook community. And I'm all over social media, but everything is all in one place on my website.
Okay, awesome.
And it looks like you can book a free call on your website too. That
Yes.
just kind of schedules a phone call or.
And some people don't like to talk, so you can actually email me or text me right there too.
That's great. And yeah, she offers virtual, in person. So please, if you're suffering, come chat. Come reach out for help.
It's okay to ask for help.
It is very okay to ask for help because believe me, you are not alone at all. Someone else has gone through what you're going through, so there is help. Well, Samantha, thank you so much. It truly was such a privilege and an honor to meet you. It's going to be great working with you moving forward. And for our listeners, again, you can find her at SamanthaRuth.com. We're going to have all of her information on K4CORadio.com website. So please reach out. And thank you again, Samantha, for coming with us tonight.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us on K4CO. Have a wonderful week.